Hello, everyone. My name is Julie McVey, and this is Unordinary Made Ordinary, where we talk about extraordinary experiences of everyday people. And today, our guest is C. Thomas Perry. Welcome.
Hi, how are you, Julie? Good to be with you.
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much. I know you are a busy man, and so I really appreciate you taking time with me.
My pleasure. It's my pleasure.
Would you mind, Colin, just sharing a little bit about your background?
Sure. Born in Melbourne, Australia, which is the second largest city in Australia, and still living here. Very, very good place to live. Grew up in a fairly normal sort of conservative suburban background, I guess. Was brought up by parents who were Christadelphian, which is a small sect of Christianity.
Oh, yeah.
And by the time I guess I was 16 or 17, I was sort of breaking out of the conservative constraints as we did in the 70s, and became a musician. I was doing a lot of rock music at that time. Became involved in smoking weed and the sorts of things that teenagers did in those decades, and sort of drifted away a little bit from the church as such, but still very much believed in God and always have believed in God for my entire life. But was really getting into the sort of the creativity of music and just exploring life, and married young and had two children. My first wife became mixed up in some weird and wonderful stuff, a bit of a cult, and that sort of split us up in the long run, which was pretty sad. So I was actually divorced with two children by age 24, which is pretty scary thought in those times. Look, at that stage, I was rather disillusioned and went off and started to live the musician life and became a roadie and went on the road and lived the lifestyle associated with all of that. Then met another woman and we married, and things went on. Unfortunately, in 1987, my daughter from my first marriage was hit by a car, and she suffered severe brain injury and was in a wheelchair for the rest of her life. She wasn't able to walk or talk, but she could use one hand to make signals to sort of communicate to a certain degree. So that was a big tragedy in my life. And I was asking some big questions of God and the universe, and why has this happened to this innocent little girl, and just sort of wrestling through all of those sorts of issues.
Wow.
And went through some very difficult times for the ensuing 10 years, things to do with the cult that were actually chasing me down. You may have heard of Anne Hamilton Byrne, and where I lived was very close to her home base in Australia, and she had a lot of followers in that area. So I was trying to avoid and escape that sort of negative cultish atmosphere that was in that area. Then, time went by, and I basically established a life, had 3 more children in my second marriage, 2 beautiful girls and a boy. Towards, I guess, 2005, that marriage split up. Sorry, I don't seem to work very well with marriages. But that marriage split up again. So I found myself in a single condition, still attending church and involved, but not really 100% sort of feeling great about God and life. I had actually studied a PhD in media during the 90s. So I'm a university lecturer, what you'd call a professor in America, I guess. And that was my life largely. I did work for a church for a while, making their television program, as my major area is media. So at that point, we're talking about 2008 at this point.
Okay.
I was, I guess, a little bit disillusioned with life, a little bit not sure where I was going with my life, not in a relationship, a bit lonely, still in touch with my kids, but yeah, just not sure about where my life was heading and not feeling great. And at that point was when I started to experience chest pains, and I went
Wow.
to see a doctor and just said, look, what's happening?
How
What's
old were
happening?
you at this time?
This would be 49
Okay.
at this point. Yeah. So no spring chicken. I was getting on a bit. Actually, at the age where quite a few men do have heart attacks around the age of 50.
Mhm.
So that was what was my major concern. Was I building up to a heart attack with this chest pain? So
Mm.
I went to see a doctor and said, please run some tests. Let's find out what's going on with me. And she ran tests and said, look, I suggest you just take it very easy and relax and wait a while
Mhm.
to see how this pans out with your condition. So I thought, yeah, sure, I'll do that. So I was waiting around probably a week and a half after having those tests, and the results were still not back. And basically was getting restless and looking out in my back garden and thinking, this is looking totally out of control.
Okay.
So at that point, I decided, no, I can't sit around and just let my garden be overtaken by weeds and jungle. So I went out and started to start the trimmer, the edge trimmer, which was a machine that did not want to start. At this point is where I launch into the whole death experience. So did you want to take any particular angle on that?
No, that was a fantastic introduction. I appreciate that. That really gives us a lot of context and moving into this amazing near-death experience. So please continue if you would and walk
Sure.
us through that. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm out in the back garden of my house. I'm on my own. There's nobody else there. It was Sunday, the 25th of May, 2008. And I was trying to start this line trimmer, and it would not start. It just would not start. I was pulling on the cord and getting angry with this stupid machine that just would not do its job. And as I was doing this, I'd totally forgotten about my heart condition. The pain had receded and I was feeling pretty reasonably okay. So as I was doing this, suddenly, bang, there was this huge just impact in my chest. It's like a massive cramp. Not necessarily incredibly painful, but very much my entire chest just cramped up tight. And I felt, difficulty breathing. And I knew straight away, this is not good. This is not good at all. And as this was happening, I heard a voice. And when I say I heard a voice, this was a voice that was loud. I heard a very loud voice, probably inside my head. It could have been audible. I don't know. There was nobody there to tell me this. But a very loud voice just said to me, you are going to die, but I have things for you to do. And at that point, I just stopped and looked up and just said, hang on a minute. You're telling me I'm going to die, but you're telling me I have things to do. And I was a little bit confused about what was going on here. So this voice just said to me very plainly, go inside, pack a bag, call an ambulance and be ready.
Okay, this is very interesting.
Explicit instructions, and so, okay, all right, whatever you say. So I went in, packed a bag, called 000, as it is in Australia. And within about 10 minutes, I guess, an ambulance had arrived. And two ambulance operators, paramedics came inside. One was first day on the job. Poor young man. I was his first patient.
Wow.
So he was taking charge, and the more experienced operator was standing over his shoulder, just watching that he did everything correctly. And they just said to me, look, we don't know if it's a heart attack. You seem to have symptoms that are consistent with it, but we're not sure. So they took the usual precautions. They gave me a nitroglycerol, which is to lower blood pressure, and morphine, also to lower blood pressure. So that was fine. They then loaded me onto the gurney and into the back of the ambulance. And off we went for the hospital. And about 2 kilometers down the road, they said, look, we're going to give you another dose of morphine and nitroglycerol. Which they did. And after they gave me that dose, I have passed out. I've fainted before in my life. And I said, I'm about to pass out. I'm about to go. I could feel it happening. And then I was in darkness, just simply in darkness. Now I have, as I said, I have passed out before. This is not something I haven't experienced. I know what it is to pass out, but this was different.
Oh, okay.
I was very much my consciousness outside of my body. I wasn't seeing my body. I was just my consciousness in darkness. And I felt as if I was floating in water. I was light, weightless, free, easy. The pain was all gone. And I was just basically drifting along. It was quite dreamlike and quite pleasant at that point in time. And I just thought, wow, what's this? It's to explain it, it's not quite the same as being in your body and conscious. It's a different sense. It's more like being in a dream. It's more like being in a dream world. You still know who you are. You know exactly your identity, but you just feel different. You feel you are a spirit. You do not feel the same. So I was drifting along in this dark, liquid sort of state, and it gradually began to occur to me, I think I may have died, because it was so different to anything else I'd experienced. And at this point, a little bit of fear started to creep in. I thought, oh, this is not good. I think I might be dead here. What am I supposed to do? I'm floating along in darkness. There's nothing. There's just nothing. And as I began to fear, I began to drift downwards. I could feel myself drifting downwards. And that in turn made me more afraid, because I knew enough to know that was not necessarily a good sign. I'm drifting downwards. I'm falling. And this went on for what felt like a couple of minutes. And the fear rose, and I made the big mistake of sort of looking down and turning my awareness to what was beneath me. And there was just this sense of a bottomless void beneath me, just absolute darkness, absolute nothingness, an absolute complete vacant, empty, dark space beneath me. And I could just tell it just went forever. It did not stop. And I did not want to go there. At this point, I was really quite afraid. So having been brought up a Christian, having a belief in God, at that point, with all my being, I just screamed out, Jesus, help me. I was very scared. So I cried out several times, Jesus, help me. And continued to drift and go downwards. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, this very strong arm came down and just grabbed my forearm and started to pull me upwards. And he said to me, you don't want to go that way. And he started to pull me upwards very, very rapidly. So I was flying. Somehow I knew what was up and down in that state, flying upwards very fast. I confess to being a bit of a Trekkie in former years, and it was very much like going into light warp. It was, things were just flashing past. I have no idea what they were, but we were traveling at an incredible speed for some period of time, and going up. And as we ascended, I could sense a bit of light starting to appear, and things began to become a little bit visible. And eventually we stopped, and I found myself lying on my side as if on the floor, but there was no floor. I was just lying in space. And as my senses adjusted to this new environment, I could see what was around me, and I realized there was about 5 or 6 angels were standing in a semicircle around me, and also the one who came to get me was there as well. And I was just taken aback, and took a little while to adjust and to just appreciate what was happening here, because it was so profound. When I say that, it was a very different state to be in a spiritual state and in the spiritual realm. We are so attuned to our 5 senses and taste, sight, all of these things, but everything was different. I was so much lighter, so much more free, and I could feel the thoughts of these angels. It wasn't speech. Speech did not occur, but I was aware of their thoughts, and they were aware of my thoughts, and there was this direct communication that was very, very deep and very meaningful. and I could feel just this enormous sense of wisdom, this agelessness, this honor that was just emanating out of these beings. And right at the core of this was this beautiful, beautiful sense of love that, I mean, I've experienced love in my lifetime, but this was just on another level altogether. The sense of love was so deep, I just felt my chest was going to burst from the power of this love.
Wow.
So I was just lying there, just literally blissed out, saying, this is just the best thing I've ever experienced. And I was just lying there, bathing in this love. It was profound. It was wonderful. And then the one who came to get me just sort of said to me quietly, look, you have died, and you are here, and we are outside of heaven. You're in the transition space,
okay.
And we need to make a choice of whether you go on with us into paradise or whether you return to your life at this point. And he said, the choice is yours. You can choose whether you want to come on or whether you want to return. And so I had a bit to think about at that point in time. I considered, my children, my brain injured daughter, I had all of that in place. My youngest was 8 at that point in time. So I still felt like I had a lot of responsibility in my life as a father. And I thought about that and other things. I just didn't feel like my life's work was complete. I felt like I still had a lot of things to do on earth as such. So I said, look, I think I do need to return. And at this point, a bit of fear returned, because I was thinking of my children. I was thinking of my life and thinking, I'm dead. I'm not there for them. And I started to become afraid again. And as I did this, the response from the angels was really quite interesting, because they reacted very quickly and came to me and calmed me with their minds and calmed me down very quickly and said, no, we can't have that here. We don't have fear.
Oh, wow.
Fear is not okay here. That's something that we just don't have at this level. That's very out of place to have that feeling here in this environment. So they calmed me down and took me back to a place of sort of peace and contentment. And I said, yeah, look, I think I need to return. I think I need to do my life's work. I think I need to complete the contract as such. Didn't feel like things were over. And so, okay, that then he sort of, the one who had got me, sort of thought and said, all right. And he said to one of the angels, go and check the vessel, by which he was referring to my body. And one of the angels took off, and off he flew. And I watched him go. And as I watched, I could see in the extreme distance, I could see my body in the ambulance a long way away. And I could see this angel fly down and start to move around my body. The ambulance operators were there. I could see them working on me rather frantically. And he just started to move around my body. They couldn't see him, but he was checking things out. And in the meantime, I was left there, and I just turned to the one who had come to rescue me. And I just said, who are you? And he just said, I'm the one you call Lord. Being a Christian, I know exactly who that is. This was Jesus. He had actually come to collect me when I called for him. So at that point, I was just, wow. I was really overcome with just the emotion of where I was and who I was with and what was happening. It was so powerful. It was so beautiful. It was so wonderful to be in his presence. And I was just overcome and just, whoa, here I am with you. So different believing in somebody in a religious sense and actually being in their presence and experiencing who they are. And that was when I just turned my attention completely on him. And he just said to me, look, while I've got you here, I need to do some things for you. During my life, I had been, through the whole drug thing rather badly, and that cult had actually drugged me on a couple of occasions and really caused me some damage. So he said, I need to do some healing within you. And at this point, it was very much that his spirit joined with my spirit. and I could feel his presence inside me, and he started to shift things. He started to move things around, blockages and
Wow.
pains and griefs and things like that. And he was just sort of shifting my whole being around and rearranging what was happening. It was a most incredible experience. Then at that point in time, because we were joined just for this brief couple of minutes, I actually experienced his awareness, and I could feel what he was thinking and what his awareness encompassed. And it was mind-blowing. I just struggled to find words to explain how far-reaching and how deep his awareness is. At that point in time, I felt that I could have looked under a rock in Africa and known exactly what was there. Like every molecule, everything was in his awareness, and he was aware of it.
Wow.
Including through time. Like I could just sense that he knew exactly what was going to happen for the next 20,000 years and beyond. He just was, all knowledge of the universe seemed to be within him, and he seemed to be able to comprehend everything that is, from start to finish, from beginning to end. So I just had this brief glimpse, I guess, of how big and how wide and how enormous and infinite his awareness is. And that's something I will never forget. That was something that I took with me for the rest of my life, that nothing comes close to that moment and to that awareness. That is the high point of my existence by far. And that was incredibly profound. It was beautiful. So he did this, and he changed me around, and he healed me, and then he sort of withdrew from me, and I was just totally taken aback and just lying there going, wow, what just happened? And the angel returned, the one that he'd sent down to my body, and he just said, the vessel is good. So he turned to me and said, okay, we can send you back, but first I just want to talk to you about a few things. He said, if we take you on to paradise now, that's a done deal. Basically, you'll be there with us forever. If I send you back to earth, the choices are yours. He said, I can't guarantee the choice you make in your life, the things that you do from now on could affect that. So if you do go back to your life, it's your call, it's your choice, and the choices you make will be the things that define your destiny in terms of whether you come back to paradise or not. He said, there's a couple of people you're going to meet and get to know. And he was talking to me about things that were in the future that hadn't happened yet, and preparing me and saying, are you okay to go back into this situation and live this life? And I sort of said, yeah, okay. He showed me bits and pieces. It was very much like watching a video. He was actually showing me pieces of my future life, which did come to pass, like it did happen. And I saw it, and I decided, yeah, look, I will go back, and I will enter into this life again and go through these things. Because he said, there's going to be risks. There are going to be risks in your life, things that are a threat to you. And he basically explained quite a number of things to me. I had very brief glimpses of the distant future and things like this, but he was actually talking to the angels about this. They were looking through time at my life, and he was saying to them, no, he shouldn't see this bit. Yes, he can see this bit. He was sort of guarding me against seeing too much of my future. It was very, very interesting to me. So this went on for a little while, and he sort of prepared me and talked me up about what I was going back into. And then he said, okay, are you ready? Are you ready to go? And I said, oh, well, I guess so. And I think I remember saying something about, I really do want to come back here. I didn't really want to leave. I must explain this. It was so beautiful there. I wasn't busting to get back to that ambulance by any means. I really would far rather have stayed in that beautiful, blissful state, but I just felt a sense of responsibility that I needed to follow up and to get back. If there was a plain choice and I didn't have those responsibilities, there is no way known in a million years I would have come back, because it is so good and so beautiful there that you'd have to be slightly crazy to want to come back. And I mean, I don't think people really understand that until you've been there. The sense there is that it is more real than this existence. That's a strange statement, I know, but we often think this is reality. But when you go into that spiritual state, the reality there is far, far greater than it is here. It is scaled up. We live.
I think every NDEer I've talked to has said it's used terms like it's hyper real, it's ultra real, and you come back here, it's kind of like a dream in comparison. That is one of the most across the board similar things I hear. It's so interesting.
Yeah. Oh, look, there's just no comparison. The existence there is 100% above this. I believe in a multi-layered universe. I do. I mean, the Apostle Paul even talked about the third heaven. You know, like there's quite a complex series of universes out there that we don't really understand. But there is an ascending hierarchy, and I was on my way up. You know, I was part way up, and I could feel what it was like in that higher level, and it was just superb, just a wonderful place to be. I really can't emphasize enough how difficult it was coming back and re-entering this life. Initially, I'll explain how it was coming back. They sent me back, and again, I felt myself in that floating in water sort of condition. And I don't know if anyone listening has seen Lord of the Rings, and there's this one scene where Sam falls out of the boat and sinks under the water, and Frodo reaches down and pulls him out of the water. But just that sense of looking up and seeing a light and being lifted out and finding yourself back in the daylight. And that's how it was coming back into my body. And it was just like, boom. And I entered back in, and I suddenly found myself in my body again. And after being in this beautiful spiritual place with these amazingly beautiful beings, it was just like hitting concrete. It was so clumsy and heavy, and I just felt very, very heavy. Very, very heavy would be the best way I could put it, whereas I had felt so light and free in the spiritual environment. So I still had chest pain. I was still having a heart attack. But I no longer had the fear. Prior to that, I was quite afraid. I'm dying, you know, I could be dying here. But the fear was gone. I just didn't have a fear of death. No more. It was like, oh, you know what? If I die again, great, because I'll be going back there, you know? So that was very much the sense of what was going through me at that point in time. So I spoke to the ambulance operator, the young guy. He looked at me and he said, oh, you're back with us. You're here again. And he was standing there with the 2 defibrillator pads in his hand. He was about to apply them. And I said, yeah, wow. Must have been ages. I've been away a long time. What's been happening, you know? And he looked at me strangely and said, you've only been gone a minute. And I was really shocked, because what I had experienced to me was at least 20 minutes to half an hour worth of experience. It was quite extended. And yet I came back, and I'd only been gone for 1 minute. I was flabbergasted. I couldn't believe the difference in the time scale. It was just incredible. And I said, look, you know, I've been with the angels. You know, sort of
you did.
I was trying to say, I saw angels. I saw Jesus. This was amazing. This was incredible. And he's like, whoa. And this poor ambulance operator, he's as white as a sheet. He didn't know what to make of any of this. And I found I didn't have a shirt on. And I said, oh, where's my shirt? I'm a bit chilly. Wouldn't mind getting my shirt back on. And he said, oh, I threw it down in the corner here. It's sopping wet. And I said, oh, well, look, just pass it back up, would you? And he passed it back up to me, and it was dry as a bone. And I said to him, this shirt is completely dry. What are you talking about? And he was back, you know, taken aback like this, and he felt it. And he said, that shirt was dripping. That shirt was absolutely dripping when I took it off you. I can only think it's something to do with that I was in this floating watery state, and somehow that's bled through into this reality. I just don't know how to explain that, but That is exactly what occurred. And he couldn't make any sense of that. The fact that the shirt was 1 second it was dripping wet, the next it was dry.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It is, yeah. I'm still really blown away by that there is this sort of transition of things between these levels. And that continued to happen to me for days after that.
Oh.
Yeah, so I eventually found myself in hospital, and they ran tests. It took, usually there's a particular enzyme they test for with heart attacks to see if you've actually had a heart attack. They didn't think I'd had one because I was in such good spirits. I was okay. I was a bit pale, but I was doing all right. And it took, usually it was a 12-hour window, but my enzyme eventually showed up. I said to them, "Look, run test one more time. I know I've had a heart attack." So they ran it one last time at 12.5 hours, and it showed up, and they realized, yes, there has been a heart attack.
Okay.
So they then took me in to theatre and placed a stent in my heart. Now, at this point, it hadn't stopped. I don't know how to quite put this, but the communication was still there. I was still hearing the angels speaking to me. And they came to me at one point and said, we've healed 3 arteries, but there's one we won't heal. And I was, oh, okay. And I was a bit bemused by that, but that's okay, whatever. You guys are in control. So when I went into theatre, the head cardiologist came to see me, and he said, you're a very lucky man. He said, we'd say you've had a heart attack before, and you're one of these very lucky people that the arteries have regrown and rerouted around the blocked arteries, so that you've actually had several blocked arteries, but the arteries have regrown around them.
Wow.
So and I was sitting there thinking, no, I don't think they've regrown. Somebody's intervened. Somebody's done something here. I had one blockage that still needed to be stented, so I have to this day a stent in there.
Okay.
That's holding that artery open. And the sense when the stent went in was quite amazing. Just suddenly there was blood flow, and suddenly energy returned to me, and I was feeling a lot better. But still, that wasn't the end of it. Like I could still feel the presence of the angels every now and again. I could like feel them in the room with me. And I just said to, my wife came to see me, my former wife at that point came to see me, and I said, please, can you bring me my Bible? And I want to just read up on this stuff while I'm in hospital. So they brought me my Bible, and I just started throwing it open. And the most incredible things were happening. It was like, I think 6 or 7 times I threw my Bible open, and every time I did it, it opened right on something that said, I have saved you from death. I have raised you from the grave. And then it was the story of Lazarus. Then it was the resurrection of Jesus. Then it was Psalm 16 and Psalm 30, where it's talking about, I have not allowed you to see death. I've restored you to life. It was just incredible. The odds, wow. I don't know what the odds are, but I was just throwing it open, and it was just falling open to these pages time and time and time again. But I knew, wow, you are still here. You are still watching. You've still got your hand on this situation. It was very real to me. And that sort of stayed with me. I think it diminished a bit over time, but it has really stayed with me ever since then. Just that knowledge that they are here, that Jesus is here, that the angels are here, and that they are observing us. We can't see them, but they can see us, and they're watching what goes on. Yeah. So,
wow,
all sorts of interesting stuff. And then at this point, one of the voices said to me, I was sort of saying, I'm alone. I need to meet someone, I'm lonely. And they just said, look, this person is within 1 kilometer of where you're lying right now. So I thought, wow, okay, what's this? Well, I did meet someone a couple of weeks after that, and yes, they lived about 800 meters from that hospital, which was just incredible.
A couple weeks after your NDE?
That was about 2 weeks after. Yeah.
So they're still talking to you, communicating telepathically, yes. Would you say, is what it is?
Oh, that's the word we use for it. Yes.
Okay.
I mean, in older ages, we would talk about things like prayer and visions and hearing the voice of God. And I mean, yeah, it's telepathic. It is. It's telepathic. That's the word we would use for it now. It's exactly the same thing. It is possible to have telepathy between people. It is also possible to have telepathy with angels and with Jesus. It is quite real. I'm 100% convinced of that. And the fact that they said to me, you're going to meet this person, they're going to live close to the hospital, and I did. I mean, every bit of it came true, and I was just thinking that how can you doubt this? How can you
Right.
possibly doubt this?
Was this little bit also in the visions of the future that you were shown? Or no?
Not the person was, yes. I don't want to go too far into it because it's very personal, and I don't want to reveal identities and do things like that.
Sure.
But yes, the person was in the visions of the future. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when you saw her,
the first time I saw this person, it was, whoa, is this person? And the second time I saw this person, it was, yes, it is this person. And I, before too long, I told her about my experience and let this out, and she was, whoa, a bit taken aback, didn't quite know what to make of it. But yeah, look, that was certainly a part of what went on. And look, it's sort of receded a bit, but at times over the years since then, because that's quite a while ago now, that's 14 years ago now. At times from then until now, there have been times when I've just visually, spiritually gone back in, like you say, times of deep meditation, and I've gone out of my body and been there, and seen things in that heavenly realm several times.
Does it feel the same or slightly different?
Slightly different, but very similar. Very similar experience, but not quite as profound and deep as being there as such, but sort of being there spiritually, visually. It certainly still has a huge impact, and I don't quite know how to explain that, but I gather we're there to an extent as far as we can be in our human condition. But when I was there that time, I was out of my human condition completely. So I was right in that presence.
Are there any other future things that you were shown that you'd want to maybe share, that they got it right? I don't want, anything you feel comfortable with. If you don't feel comfortable with sharing.
Oh, look, I will share, because it's really happening. About 2 or 3 years ago, I was given a really long series of dreams, repeating, same dream, repeating, and it was massive tidal waves, tsunamis coming towards me, and they would break, and I would think, I'm going to be crushed, I'm going to die here, and these tsunamis would just break, and then they'd be nothing more than foam at my feet. And then another one would come and the same thing would happen. And then another one would come and the same thing would happen. And it was all sorts of things going through my mind, what this was about. So I sort of questioned, and I prayerfully asked God to show me what this was about. And I got a very clear commentary about what he said to me. Was this was just at the start of COVID. And he said, these first waves are pandemic coming on the world.
Whoa.
And I was aware it had already started. It wasn't like I didn't know that. He said the first waves of pandemic coming on the world, and that will go for a while. And then just when that's settling down, he said, then there'll be war. And he said there'll be war for some time. And it will seem enormous, and it will seem very big and very threatening, like this tidal wave. And he said, and when the war is settling down, then we'll start a time of natural disasters like the earth has never seen. So that was pretty much what he was telling me. There was going to be a series of waves hitting the world that were going to be enormous. But he said, you'll be protected. You will be protected. My people will be protected. So that's...
At this point, though, you don't have fear of death any longer anyway?
Oh, look, I'm human. There are times I do fear it. There are times I do wonder if my life since I came back has been good enough. But look, I believe in forgiveness. I believe in grace. I believe God doesn't necessarily want to destroy us. And as long as we're seeking after him and seeking to find him in our lives, and we're not abusing and destroying and hurting people, that that, you know, he will look after us. I really believe that he's a loving, loving being. And when I was there with him, that was the one thing that came across. He doesn't want to hurt anyone. He's there to try and lift people up and help them. That's what God wants to do. The problems we make, either it's the powers of darkness or it's our own human fallibility, our greed, our hatred, etc., etc. Those sorts of emotions that we really can do without. But God wants to help us and lift us up. That's definitely my understanding from being with him.
What do you feel now is the purpose of life? Why were we all, or do you have an opinion about that? Why were we all created? Why are we here? You know, there's a lot of, as we have shared, a lot of suffering.
I think, gee, there's a beautiful song Joni Mitchell wrote, and I think she captured it really well. We've got to get back to the garden. We're caught in the devil's bargain. And I really feel humanity is literally stuck between multiple levels where we're caught in the middle. There's the upper dimensions, which we refer to as the heavens. There's the lower dimensions we refer to as hell. And we're sort of stuck in this middle. We perceive it as the middle because that's where we are. But we're a part of, I guess, the universe, God's plan of creation and life. And each one of us is a soul on a journey. And that journey can be up or that journey can be down. And it depends what we do and the choices we make. He made that very clear to me, what we believe in, how we live. And my understanding of it all is what Jesus said, love one another. Like it's pure and it's simple and it's beautiful. And that power of love, again, he said, you know, God is love. God is love. When we love, we are being God and we are engaging with him and we are acting out what his purpose for us is. And I think that's the simplest and most pure way to put it. This is why we're created. We are created to love and be loved. And I think that's the highest point of human existence. All the other stuff, all the earthly possessions and careers and power and politics and things like that, once you move beyond this body, you realize how futile and meaningless and pointless all of that stuff is. Not completely, but that is not what we are living for. What we are living for is those spiritual values, those deep emotional, spiritual ties that we have with people that we call love. That's the highest point. And loving people we don't know, loving people we might meet on the street, loving people in Ukraine, that is even higher. That is the highest point of love, being willing to give yourself for human well-being, I guess.
Well, I find it very loving and self-sacrificial that you were in that moment. I know it's your kids, but you were in that moment of bliss and you came back anyway. Isn't that a gesture of love?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, like it's easy to love your own kids. I find it hard to do anything else. It's very true what you're saying though, and it was difficult to tear myself and bring myself back for my kids. Whether they see it that way, I don't know. Maybe they'd rather see me gone, but it was a hard decision. But like you say, that self-sacrifice that parents have for their children, that they're willing to give their lives, they're willing to give everything they've got to see their children do well. And it's like extending that to everybody. I really believe that's what we're here. If we give ourselves to help other people around us, I think that's the high point of human existence. And that's what God wants us to do. That's why we're here, to demonstrate that we can live out his love to other human beings.
It's so interesting to me that you were given the choice, because I've heard that often with these experiences, the choice to go back or stay. It's interesting. You'd think you wouldn't. So it makes me wonder, do we have a choice when we come into this world initially? Would be curious about your thoughts on that. And I'm really curious of your thoughts on reincarnation, because some come
Yeah.
back saying, oh, yes, and then others don't know, and then others say no.
Well, one thing I haven't mentioned yet, and a lot of people mention this, is when I was there, I felt very strongly the presence of my extended family ancestors and those who'd passed on.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And I could feel they were there. I couldn't necessarily see them, but I felt them. I felt their awareness. I felt their eyes on me as such. And I just knew, I felt, wow, this feels like the family reunion I went to, like
Wow. Okay.
very much so, very, very strongly, a sense of belonging and family that they were there. And I don't know if they've reincarnated, why would they be there? That's
True.
my position. I don't personally believe in reincarnation. I think our soul is here, we live, we die, we move on to what's the next phase of God's plan for us. And I don't think it's necessarily coming back here again and again and again. Yeah.
What about the choice to come here in the first place? Do you think that's a choice? Like, since our exit seems to be a choice in a sense, I mean, and one end a year, at least one, she shared that she believes there's 3 exit points. We have 3 options. And maybe that was one of your 3 options, and you're like, no, I'm going to go back. I don't know.
I don't know either, but I would say, does a baby have a choice about whether it's born or not? Does a soul have a choice? I tend to feel like there's an inevitability to it all. We know one day we're going to die. It's just the nature of the universe and the way God's created us. And I think we will, just as we sort of pass through that birth canal, we will pass through that tunnel or whatever it is into the next realm. I don't know about coming back again. I really don't know. And I would only be speculating, to be honest. I mean, these things are in God's hands. I don't claim to have that knowledge. I'm not putting myself up there as knowing God's intimate plans for every human being. From my sense, from what I understand, I think we move on and we go to a higher level or a lower level and we move on into another existence. One thing we most definitely do is continue to exist. There's no question in my mind about that. No, death is not the end. Death is a transition from one condition to another. I'm convinced of that 100%.
And the pit, as you named it, and I've heard that terminology used before in other NDEs. Your feeling, your sensation was when you were going down through you felt like you were going down in a negative place to the negative area, hellish areas, if you will.
It was negative. Look, I didn't see fire and brimstone. No, I did not see that sort of thing. What I sensed was a cold, dark, empty, lonely nothingness.
Okay.
I refer to it as the abyss. It was just nothing. And I was very afraid of it. I was very afraid of it. I could really sense it was something very, very negative. And everything within me was sort of trying to pull away from it. But the more afraid I got, the more I was falling down. It's interesting. In the Bible, there is a couple of times it says, and whoever calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. And that's exactly what I did. And I think there is something to that. And I know there's another New Zealand man who was bitten by a box jellyfish, and he had a very profound near-death experience, and he wasn't even a Christian. He was not even a believer in God, and yet he found himself with Jesus, and Jesus told him it was the prayers of his mother that had brought him there. So it's not clear cut.
Wow, interesting. So even though you'd think that there's so much love surrounding each person that's brought into this world, I mean, at least the love of a mother, minimally, that, I mean, I love the idea that even within the person, if for some reason they can't conjure up the love, they're overwhelmed with fear, that the love of another can have such an impact for them.
This
That's
is what I don't hold
fantastic.
with the sort of the whole side of Christianity where people are saying you're bound for hell. No, I don't like that. I don't think it's not the way Jesus taught. It's not really what Christianity is about. Christianity is about love. It's about God helping us. It's about God lifting us out of our human condition to a higher condition.
Mm.
So it's really about that evolution, not in the Darwinian sense, that growth
Right.
from the
Sure,
human
sure.
condition to the spiritual condition.
Right.
And that's the core of what it's about. It's coming out of the body into the spirit at a
Mm.
higher level. And that was certainly my experience.
Yeah. I just feel when you mentioned the fear started to, you had this fear and you're going down, and it seemed there was a connection with the growing fear and the correlation that you went faster or you just kept going further down because of the fear, maybe,
Mm,
or
mm,
partly due to
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. I think the fear was self-compounding. The more
Okay,
afraid I got, the faster I went down.
it's
Fear's
interesting.
fear is something to fear. Yeah, that's very much the way I feel.
Hmm.
And interesting, once again, that Christianity teaches against fear. Fear not,
Yes,
for I am with you.
no
Very
fear in
simple,
love.
but very simple, but very profound statements that it contains, particularly from Jesus. Fear not, for I have redeemed you, or I have saved you.
Mm-hmm.
That's a recurring message.
Mm.
So fear in itself is to be avoided.
I know we're running out of time and you have to go to a lecture. There's so many things I could talk about right now, but I guess we're going to have to wrap it up. Darn it. Please, before we do that though, what are you working on, any current projects? And I do want you to share a little bit about your book.
Okay, yeah, well, the book is called Dying to Be Alive by C. Thomas Perry. You'll find it on Amazon or any of the Barnes and Noble major bookstores have it in stock. I would advise you to get the ebook copy. Is a lot cheaper and a lot more accessible than the paperback copy. It runs through in detail. I also go through some of the visions and things that I had after my near-death experience, and I also go quite deeply into some of the things written in the Bible and how to interpret this whole spiritual level above us and how we can access it. And basically, one of the main messages of the book is how we can become portals of that kingdom of heaven into the earth, how we can become ways for that heavenly realm to reach down into this earthly existence. So that's very much the theme of my book, plus a pretty comprehensive retelling of the story of what I've been through.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's the book. Am I working on any other projects? I'm tossing up. I would love to make a documentary. I'm in media and I'd love to make a documentary film about this. So if you could help me out there, that'd be wonderful. I would be really interested in hearing from people about their experiences. So even if you could send me, look, any information on that. My email is Colin T. Perry 58@gmail.com. So if anyone wants to email me their stories, I'm interested in starting to compile them and potentially interview people about their experiences and put them together into a documentary of some sort. So it's just an idea brewing in my mind at the moment, but
Yeah, that would be great.
Love to go with. Yeah.
Okay, so they can contact you through your email, and I will put these links up in the video description. And can they contact you through your Facebook page as well?
Yeah, there is a Facebook page, which is C. Thomas Perry author.
Okay.
So you can find me there as well. Look, the most direct way to contact me is email. I hope I don't get too flooded, but I'd love to hear a few stories, and I'd like to work towards interviewing people and getting records of this on camera so that we can put something together, because I really think the world needs to know about this. And I'm sure that's one of the reasons I came back, was to try and spread the word of this so that people are more aware.
Absolutely. Well, fantastic. And I do want to leave you with the last word before I sign off. If there's just anything else on your heart that you're thinking, oh, I just wanted to share this one last message, or if we missed anything. We
To
missed a
me,
ton.
look, yeah, the most important thing I am left with is don't be locked into this world. We are multi-dimensional beings. As human beings, we are physical. Yes, science would tell us we are all physical and nothing but physical, but after my experience, no, we are far more than that. And I would just really ask people to reach out to God in your life. Telepathically communicate with God. That's something we've traditionally called prayer.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
communicate with God, talk to him, and expect to hear back from him, because I think that is the most important factor in our lives that you will discover when you pass over. That is the most important thing in your life. So do not leave that at the bottom of the priority list.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Colin. I really appreciate you sharing your experiences with us. And thank you to everyone watching. This has been Julie McVey with Unordinary Made Ordinary. And I hope you'll join us next time for another fascinating interview. If you enjoyed this, please give it a thumbs up. And if you like this type of content, please subscribe and hit the bell icon so you're alerted to future videos. I hope you're all having a fantastic day or evening, wherever you are on the planet or off the planet. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you so much, Julie. Bye.